Hey guys, it's a cold, wet, rainy fall day that's pretty miserable. Not a good day to go fishing. Not a good day to do much of anything outdoors, except maybe duck hunting. But today, I'd like to talk to you about some of my favorite memories of fishing. When I lived in Virginia, I would fish the Upper James River pretty often, and it was a fantastic place to nail smallmouth bass. I mean, just amazing, especially if, like me, you were on a kayak. Because I would launch from a place where people would launch other boats, but I would end up in places that they really couldn't safely get their boats with an outboard. And I never saw anybody fishing in a bass boat or anything near me the entire time I was out there, at least not on the stretches that I was fishing. And so the pressure was pretty low, as you would expect. I caught so many smallmouth bass on so many occasions that I would occasionally get tired of taking them off the hook. Now, I know that that seems like a ridiculous statement, or at least the kind of fish story that lots of anglers tell, but it's completely true. And let me tell you how I did it. So, I would paddle upriver past the places that I wanted to fish and let the current slowly bring me downriver while I fished every eddy and pool and small lee that I could find. And what I was throwing might surprise you. So, as you'd expect, I used an awful lot of rooster tails, both small and big, and yeah, the smallies loved them. I used everything from this Warden's Original to, Mepps Aglias like this, and, every kind of every kind of inline spinner you can imagine. I also threw quite a bit of small topwater torpedoes like this, prop baits and things, mostly walking the dog under vegetation or around the back of a rock or in those leaves, and that was surprisingly effective too. But I'll tell you what was complete and utter murder, and this might surprise you. I was throwing small poppers like these that are designed to be cast with a fly rod. And I was using my ultralight, and I could only cast them 10, 15 feet. And 15 feet would be if it was a particularly heavy one. And I had to modify my casting technique to have a lot of line out and then basically whip it to get that lure to go anywhere. But when I did, and that fly lands on the water, it was absolute insanity. I would give it a couple of pops, and it was nailed. And I mean hit hard, because I don't think any freshwater fish hits as hard for size as a smallmouth bass. They would come completely out of the water. I had one come out of the water and land in my kayak. It hit these things so hard. And let me show you what I mean here. I've thrown this one for quite a few seasons. I don't know how well you can see that. It used to have legs. I've had to repaint it with fingernail polish. It got murdered by largemouth and smallmouth bass. And that's the next thing I want to mention to you. Now, I'm not suggesting you're going to see these H&H hula poppers on the tournament series. Pros aren't going to be throwing these. They don't cast far enough. They're just not that kind of lure. They're not a lure for winning a tournament. But if you want to have a blast and you've got an ultralight rod, you can throw these not only to smallmouth, but crappie absolutely destroy them. And largemouth bass cannot leave them alone. And I think the reason is that combination of ultralight and this very attractive fly with all this plumage and these little legs, as well as the sort of concavity at the front that creates, that popping action that's so attractive top water. Man, the largemouth bass cannot leave that alone. Now, I didn't catch a ton of huge bass on those poppers, to be fair. They were mostly, 1, 2, and 3 pounds would be the biggest bass that I ever caught on a hula popper. But when you hook a 3-pound bass on an ultralight rod with 6-pound test, you have really gotten a hold of something. That's like hooking a submarine, man. And you want to talk about fun. I have never had as much fun as I did fishing with those hula poppers on the Upper James River for smallmouth bass. If you have the chance to do it, it is a fantastic fishing destination. The bottom is rocky, the water is clear, and unless it has rained in the last few days, maybe 4 or 5 days, the water will stay clear and the smallmouth will be turned on like you can't believe in those stretches that can't get hit by bigger boats. So if you're a kayak angler and you have the chance to fish the Upper James River around Charlottesville, I strongly encourage you to do it. And I encourage you to go out and get yourself some hula poppers and learn to cast them as well as you can. They don't cast well. I'll be the first person to admit that. But you don't need to cast far when you're fishing from a kayak. You're being stealthy and you've got such a attractive finesse technique to get the smallies biting. I'd love to hear what you think about this. I'd love to hear if you've tried these hula poppers like this with conventional tackle. And I'll be talking to you soon. Take care.